so grateful to have you here today. I feel like your message and everything that you stand for needs to be heard. And I'm actually shocked that it's not already, based on some of the data and the science that I've heard you talk about. It's frightening.
Phenomenon of we have eliminated the foundation for biology, life, to happen on Earth. And we're seeing it way outside of the human species effects. We're losing an estimated 20 species every 20 minutes. And so one species every 20 minutes goes to extinction now. And so this pace of annihilation of life on Earth has wiped out an estimated 40% of biology in just the last 50 years. And so we're almost halfway done with the sixth great extinction on the planet, where we'll exceed 90% wipeout of life on Earth. And we'll be swept up in that. In the next 60, 70 years, we'll be one of those species to go. That sounds like a ridiculous thing to say. How could you possibly say that? And part of it's this climate chronic disease. 75% of our air is contaminated with Roundup. 75% of our rainfall is contaminated with Roundup. And so we have so steeped this planet in this chemical. 5 billion pounds a year are used worldwide now. And so it's just like this staggering amount of this chemical. And it's not enough to just say no Roundup, because the chemical company will respond with 1,000 other chemicals behind that one if we just rule that one out. We have to instead say no Roundup. Instead, let's do bioregenesis. Let's regenerate life on the planet through a mission of biodiversification. Start a garden in your backyard. Start just one plant. If you don't have a backyard, you've got a window, then start a mint plant. Mint plants you can't kill. They're just like bulletproof. So start a mint plant. And then I would even challenge you, don't even pick the mint off the plant. Bend down like any other creature on Earth would and eat that off the stem. And then finally stumble into my plastic off-gassing car and then drive to my cubicle. And you never touch nature, you're going to die in isolation and loneliness of nature. We have saturated our capacity to get those antibiotic prescriptions into those hands. But if 83% of the population is seeing an antibiotic in a year, and unfortunately many of those are seeing multiple courses of antibiotic in a year, right? And we see this compiling damage done. One course of antibiotics in a year raises major depression rates by about 25% in the next 12 months. 2 courses of antibiotics in a year, you've got a 50% increase in major depression. And so your brain stops working, your breast cancer protection stops working. Like when we make you sterile, your physiology starts to collapse. And
what we're doing right now obviously isn't working. So we need to start somewhere. And I think it could be overwhelming for people when they hear this. So just making those little changes every single day.
They change radical things, right? But imagine for a moment, what if we tipped it a little further where we were healing faster than we were injuring, and suddenly we become healthier than we were 5 years ago. And we accelerate that, or we just hold that pace another 10 years, and we become healthier than we were 50 years ago. We accelerate that for 200 years in the future, and we could create a Garden of Eden that hasn't existed since 60 million years ago. And if we're alive in 200 years, we will have changed everything. Cancer is a normal symptom of a disconnect of cells. Cancer is the most lonely part of a human body. And we go after that with this warfare mentality, like, well, we're going to kill you. Well, if you respond by trying to kill something that's just trying to live, it's going to work a lot harder to live. Whereas if we saw, oh my gosh, there's a symptom of disconnect. There's a part of your body that's literally disconnected from the rest of your body. We need to get connection back. How will we do that? Let's increase communication. So my lab's been working on, understanding how the microbiome, the biology of our gut and our soils and everything else, actually creates a wireless network to help cell-cell communication happen in humans. And this finally closes the loop of how is it that we kill the microbiome and then human gets sick? It's because the human cells can no longer communicate. A human cell with unfettered access to information never gets cancer. In fact, if it gets too damaged that it can't thrive, or if it gets too damaged that it actually gets to a point of a cancer cell, it kills itself. You don't need an immune system to do that. The cancer itself realizes, oh, can't fix myself, I'm too damaged, there's a larger organism here, I need to get it out of the way, stem cell call in, replace me, all is good. If the cell doesn't know that the rest of the organism is there, all it knows is it's supposed to survive. And so a tumor is literally a highly damaged and vulnerable cell doing everything in its power to survive because it thinks it's the last semblance of you. And so we got to love these diseases back into our bodies. And I think that that's kind of what you've done with your RA. When we sat down here, you mentioned, I feel I can now thrive with this condition, but I am not cured of this condition.
Right.
And in some ways, I believe that you have the opportunity to probably live longer than your compatriots because you have a super sensitive barometer on your day now.
Absolutely.
You know exactly if you don't move for 2 hours, you're going to be stiff and those joints are going to hurt. You got to keep moving. And most of us don't have that sensitive of a barometer. And so we can decline and decline for decades before we suddenly realize I have advanced end-stage heart disease or I have a cancer.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it because I didn't have that sensitive barometer. And so I really try to help all my patients realize, oh my gosh, I've been looking at this thing as my enemy the whole time.
Right.
I need to welcome this into my life. This is my journey. This is my path that my body is living out. I need to accept that, and I need to step into that space and love myself back into myself. And if I do that, I'm going to have a totally different journey that will not be littered with fear, guilt, and anger towards my own body or towards a medical system or whatnot. We are creatures of vibration, electromagnetic frequency vibration. We are literally creatures of light. Mitochondria are these little bugs that live inside of our cells. There's this microflora that lives inside of our cells, the microbiome of the intracellular environment. A cubic centimeter of these mitochondria produces 10,000 times more energy than a cubic centimeter of the sun. Wow. We are light energy. And
You're kind of over there and I'm doing my thing here. And I love, that's what I love about what you talk about, because you have the scientific data and you're a doctor and you have all this amazing wisdom, but you're so connected to Mother Earth. And I truly believe in that. That's been part of my healing. Is that connection and knowing that we're actually all in this together.
Yeah. And at Korea, we know it's not the food. It has nothing to do with the food. It has nothing to do with the nutrients you're talking about. I don't even know what you're talking about, microbiome. It's nothing to do with that. He said, you never ever ask somebody, and Korea agrees, what they had for dinner last night. Instead, every morning you ask them, who did you eat dinner with last night? And that just stopped me in my tracks of like,
so important.
Oh my gosh, we missed the point. This is a central organ meant to share a spiritual experience of a meal together, such that we would then communicate to one another. I have loneliness and love in me, and this is my experience today. I have joy and heartbreak in me today. This is my experience today. The food is not there for nutrients. The food is an avenue to spiritual fellowship.
Bring everyone.
It's the center point to bring us back together. So our brains are not supposed to be experiencing an isolated human experience. Our brains are so interconnected with the nature around us. We now know that the microbiome is responsible for making the neurotransmitters in our gut lining that would become a thought. There's no such thing as original human thought. There is Mother Nature expressing itself, and we get intelligence out of that. We are given right now the opportunity to be a central processing unit. We are the sensory experience of Mother Nature. And if we don't realize from that moment that we are called to co-create with her, we will miss our opportunity, I really believe.